You weren't supposed to make it this far. Not because you aren't capable, because of how the world is built. Most things are designed to keep you moving fast enough that you never stop to feel the thing tugging at the back of your chest. The thing that's been there for years. The quiet voice underneath all the noise that keeps saying, "There is more to you than this." You've been hearing it your whole life, and 99 out of 100 people learn to drown it out. They get good at it. They fill the silence so completely that they forget the voice was ever speaking. But you clicked here. Something made you stop. And I want you to understand that's not random. That's the part of you that refuses to be ignored finally getting your attention. The world has a word for that voice. The old word is ethos. Character. The thing underneath the things you do. The settled center of who you are when no one is watching and nothing is rewarding you. And here's the truth that almost nobody wants to hear. 99% of people spend their whole lives building everything else, and never once tend to that. They build careers. They build reputations. They build a version of themselves that looks right from the outside. And they leave the core untouched, untended, unknown, even to themselves. But God's chosen ones don't. That's what this whole message is about. Stay with me, because I'm going to show you something about your own life that you've probably been feeling for a long time, without having the words for it. Let me introduce myself first. My name is George. I've spent a long stretch of my life walking alongside people in their quietest, most honest moments, the moments they don't post about, don't talk about at dinner, don't even admit to the person sleeping next to them. And I've watched the same thing happen over and over. People chase the loud things, the promotion, the applause, the number in the account. And they wake up one day, sometimes in their 40s, sometimes much later, with a hollow feeling they can't explain, surrounded by everything they were told would fill them. The house is paid off. The kids are doing fine. And still there's that ache, that sense of, is this it? That ache isn't a malfunction. I need you to hear me. That ache is a calling. Think about that for a second. The reason the noise never satisfies you is that you were never built for the noise. You were built for the center, for the ethos, for the part of you that the world keeps telling you to ignore, because the world has no idea what to do with it. It can't be sold to you. It can't be bought. It doesn't photograph well, so the world looks right past it and trains you to do the same. But there's an old pattern in Scripture, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. God doesn't choose the loud ones. He chooses the ones with something settled underneath. Look at David. Before he was a king, before he was a giant killer, he was a boy in a field nobody was watching. His own father didn't even call him in from the sheep when the prophet came looking for the next king. They lined up the impressive brothers, the tall one, the strong one, the one who looked the part. And God said no. Not him. Not him either. And the prophet had to ask, almost confused, is this everyone? Don't you have another son? And they had to go fetch the boy from the field, the one nobody counted. Here's what most people miss about that story. David wasn't chosen for what he'd built out where people could see it. He was chosen for what he'd built where nobody could. Out in that field, alone, hour after hour, day after day, that's where his character was formed. The Bible tells us he killed a lion and a bear protecting sheep that weren't even worth that much. Nobody saw it. No crowd. No reward. He did the right thing in the dark, with no witness, for animals nobody would remember. And that quiet faithfulness when it didn't pay off, that was the ethos God was looking for. The world would have walked right past David. The world walks right past you too. And that's exactly why you feel like an outsider sometimes. Like you're standing at the party, but you're not quite in it. Like there's a version of life everyone else seems to be enjoying, and you keep trying to want it the way they want it, but it never quite takes. You've felt that, haven't you? That sense of being slightly out of step, of caring about things other people shrug off, of being unable to fake an enthusiasm you don't feel. That's not a flaw in you. That's the mark. Let me tell you about another one. Joseph, a young man with a dream he couldn't shake, and a family that resented him for it. His brothers didn't just dislike him, they threw him in a pit and sold him to strangers heading to a foreign country. He went from being his father's favorite to being a slave in a house where he didn't speak the language and knew no one. And here's the thing that gets me every single time. In that house, with every reason to become bitter, every reason to cut corners, every reason to say the world has done me wrong, so I'll do wrong right back, Joseph stayed faithful. He worked with integrity for a master who owned him. He kept his character in a place where character earned him nothing, and it cost him. A woman lied about him and he ended up in prison for doing the right thing. Sit with that. He did the right thing, and it made his life worse. How many of you have lived that? You held the line. You told the truth. You refused to play the dirty game everyone else was playing. And it didn't make you a hero. It made you a target. You got passed over. You got talked about. You watched people with no center at all climb right over you. And in those moments, the voice in your head says, maybe character is a sucker's game. Maybe the people without it are right. I've sat with people in exactly that place. A man in his 50s. Good man. The kind who always did right by everybody, and he told me, quietly, almost ashamed, that he'd started to envy the people who cheated. Not because he wanted to become them, but because they seemed to win, and they seemed to sleep just fine at night. And here he was, having played it straight his whole life, watching them pass him by. He asked me the question I think a lot of you have asked in the dark. What did all my integrity ever actually get me? I'll tell you what I told him. It got you a self you can live inside. The cheaters don't sleep as well as you think. And the day comes, it always comes, when the only thing a person has left is who they were when nobody was looking. The ones who sold that off have nothing to return to. You still do. That's not nothing. That's everything. But here's where it gets real. That prison wasn't the end of Joseph's story. It was the hallway. The same character that got him thrown in there was the exact thing that lifted him out. And not just out, but all the way up, to the second most powerful position in the entire nation, standing in a place where he could save the lives of the very brothers who betrayed him. The ethos that cost him everything became the thing that saved everyone. You don't see that part when you're in the prison. You only see the walls. But God sees the hallway. I want you to really feel something here, because I think you've been carrying it for a long time. The reason it's been hard for you isn't that you're doing life wrong. It's that you're one of the few who refuses to put your character up for sale. And in a world where almost everyone has a price, the person who doesn't have one looks strange, feels alone, gets misunderstood. The 99 learn to bend, to blend, to go along. They quiet that inner voice until they can't hear it anymore. And they call that being realistic, being mature, growing up. You never could do it. And you've sometimes wondered if something was wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just not one of the 99. Let me tell you about Daniel, because this one matters. Daniel was taken from his home as a young man and brought into the court of a king who wanted to remake him completely new name, new diet, new gods, new identity. Everything about that place was designed to dissolve who he was and reshape him into who they wanted. And most of the young men in that situation simply became what the palace wanted. It was easier. It was safer. It got you ahead. Daniel didn't. Quietly, not with a fight, not with a speech, just with a settled refusal, he kept his center. He kept praying when praying became illegal. Not loudly, not for show. He just opened his window the way he always had and got on his knees the way he always had, knowing full well it could get him killed. And it nearly did. They threw him to the lions for it. Here's what I want you to notice. Daniel didn't keep his faith because the moment called for courage. He kept it because of who he already was, long before the test came. The lion's den didn't create his character. It revealed it. The test always reveals what the quiet years built. And that's the question I want to leave sitting in your chest right now. Not what would you do in the big moment. Anybody can imagine themselves being brave in a story. The real question is, what are you building in the quiet years? In the field, in the prison, in the room where nobody claps. Because that is the ethos God is looking for. That's what makes a chosen one. Not the highlight, the hidden work. And I think part of you already knows you've been doing that hidden work for years. Holding a marriage together when it would have been easier to quit. Showing up for a job that doesn't see you. Loving a difficult family member nobody else has the patience for. Telling the truth in small rooms when a lie would have been smoother. Nobody handed you a trophy for any of it. And some days you wonder if it even counts. It counts. Heaven has been keeping a different record than the one the world keeps. Let me say that again, slower, because I think you need it. The world keeps a record of what's visible. Likes, titles, money, applause. It can only count what it can see. But there's another record, and it's the one that actually decides things. And it counts what the world can't even perceive. The patience you showed when no one would have blamed you for losing it. The forgiveness you offered when you had every right to hold the grudge. The prayer you whispered for someone who'd hurt you. The temptation you walked away from in a hotel room 1,000 miles from anyone who knew your name. None of that shows up on the world's ledger. All of it shows up on heaven's. And the people who look like they're winning by the world's count are very often bankrupt by heaven's. While the ones the world overlooks, the quiet, faithful ones, are richer than anyone around them. Suspects. You may be one of those people. You may have a fortune stored up that you've never once thought to count. Because you were taught to measure your life by the wrong ledger. Start measuring by the right one. I think you'll be stunned by what you actually have. And I want to tell you about Elijah, because if you've ever done the right thing and then collapsed afterward, this one is for you. Elijah had just stood alone against an entire kingdom. One man against hundreds, calling on God in front of a crowd that wanted him dead, and God showed up. Fire from heaven, the biggest, most public victory you can imagine. If character ever got rewarded with a moment of glory, this was it. He should have been on top of the world. And the very next thing the Bible tells us is that Elijah ran into the wilderness, sat down under a tree, and asked God to let him die. Read that again. The greatest day of his life was followed by the lowest. Right after the mountain came the collapse. He was so exhausted, so wrung out, so alone, that he wanted it all to end. The man who'd just called down fire couldn't get up off the ground. Why does that matter to you? Because I think some of you are there right now. You've been strong for everyone. You've held the line, carried the weight, done the right thing again and again, and now you're sitting under your own tree, empty, wondering if you have anything left. And you're ashamed of it, because you think a person of real faith shouldn't feel this tired. Here's what God did for Elijah in that moment. He didn't scold him. He didn't give him a lecture about being stronger. He let him sleep. He sent food. He let him rest. And then, only then, gently he spoke. Not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire. In a still, small voice. A whisper. The same character that can stand against a kingdom still needs to be carried sometimes. The chosen ones are not the ones who never break. They're the ones who, when they break, are caught and rebuilt and sent back out. If you're under the tree today, that's not the end of your calling. That's the part of the story right before the whisper. There are messages that pass through your eyes, and there are messages that pass through your spirit. If something in you recognized itself while watching, don't dismiss it. That is the Spirit confirming what was already written. The secret protocol carries 7 keys that unveil what heaven deposited in you before you ever arrived, things no one around you has ever been able to name. It comes with the full audiobook for your moments of prayer, silence, and encounter with God. And you also receive the awakening map, the guide that illuminates the 5 seasons of spiritual awakening, revealing with precision exactly where you are and what comes next. The link is pinned in the first comment, but only for a limited time. Don't let this moment pass without a response. I want to keep going, because there's more here, and the next part is the part that's going to set you free. Most people who carry character also carry a quiet exhaustion, because doing the right thing in a world that doesn't reward it is tiring. You give and you give. You hold the line and you hold the line. And there's a part of you that started to wonder how long you can keep it up. Whether it's worth it. Whether you're just being taken advantage of. Let me tell you about Moses, because he understood that exhaustion better than anyone. Moses spent 40 years on the backside of a desert, tending another man's sheep, after his whole life of leadership ambition fell apart in a single afternoon. 40 years. Think about what that does to a person. He'd been raised in a palace. He'd had power, position, a future. And then it all collapsed, and he ended up in the middle of nowhere doing the most invisible work imaginable, with no audience, no advancement, no sign that any of it would ever amount to anything. If you'd told the Moses of those years that he was being prepared for the most important calling in his nation's history, he would have laughed at you. He felt forgotten. He felt finished. He'd made his peace with being a nobody in the wilderness for the rest of his days. But those 40 silent years weren't punishment. They were preparation. The proud young man who tried to fix everything with his own hands had to be emptied out, slowed down, humbled, until there was room in him for something bigger than himself. The desert wasn't God forgetting Moses. It was God forming him. And when the bush finally burned, the man who answered was not the man who'd entered the wilderness. The wilderness had built the ethos that the calling would require. Maybe you're in a wilderness season right now. Maybe it feels like everything's stalled, like the door closed, like the years are just passing and nothing is happening. I need you to hear this with everything in you. The wilderness is not wasted. The quiet is not empty. The very season that feels like nothing is happening is often the season where the most important thing is being built: your character, your depth, your readiness for the thing you can't yet see coming. The 99 run from the wilderness. They fill it, escape it, numb it, anything to avoid the silence. The chosen ones learn to sit in it and let it do its work. Let me bring you one more. Esther, a young woman who found herself, through no plan of her own, in a position of impossible influence at the exact moment her people faced annihilation. And there was a moment where she had every reason to stay quiet, to protect herself, to keep her head down and let the storm pass over someone else. Speaking up could cost her everything, even her life. And someone said to her the words I want to say to you. Perhaps you have come to this position for such a time as this. Perhaps everything you've walked through, the field, the prison, the wilderness, the years nobody noticed, perhaps all of it was preparing you for a moment that hasn't arrived yet. A moment where the character you've quietly built becomes the exact thing somebody around you needs. A child who needs your steadiness. A friend at the edge who needs your truth. A room that needs one person who won't bend. You don't know when it's coming, but the work you're doing now, in the quiet, is what will make you ready when it does. There's one more I have to give you. Because some of you don't feel chosen at all, you feel small. You feel like the least likely person in the room. And if that's you, you need to meet Gideon. When the angel found Gideon, he was hiding, threshing wheat in a winepress, down in a hole, trying not to be seen. Because his people were being crushed, and he was afraid. That's the picture. A frightened man, hiding from his enemies, doing his work in secret, because the world out there was too dangerous. And the angel walked up to that man, that hiding, fearful man, and called him a mighty warrior. Gideon must have looked around to see who the angel was talking to, because that is not how he saw himself. He actually argued. He said, in effect, "You've got the wrong man. My family's the weakest. I'm the least in my family. Find somebody else." He listed all his qualifications for being overlooked. And here's what undoes me about that story. God didn't call Gideon what he was. God called him what he was becoming. The mighty warrior was already in there, sealed up under all that fear, and God could see it when Gideon couldn't see it in himself. The calling came before the courage. The name came before the proof. So if you've spent your life feeling like the least, the overlooked one, the one who doesn't measure up, the one always waiting to be found out, understand that this is exactly the kind of person God reaches for. Not the self-assured, not the ones who already think they're great, the ones hiding in the winepress, doing quiet, faithful work, certain they're nobody special. That's where heaven goes looking. That might be the very reason this found you today. That's the pattern. That's the thread running through every one of these lives. God doesn't choose the people the world would choose. He chooses the ones with something real underneath. The ones who kept their character when it cost them. The ones who stayed faithful in the field, in the prison, in the desert, in the rooms, with no applause. And the reason this message found you, the reason you're still here, still listening, when 99 out of 100 would have scrolled past a long time ago, is that something in you recognizes itself in these stories. You know what it is to do the right thing in the dark. You know what it is to be misunderstood for your convictions. You know the loneliness of being one of the few who won't put their soul up for sale. That's not a burden. That's an inheritance. And I think it's time you stopped apologizing for it. Stop trying to be one of the 99. Stop forcing yourself to want what they want, to chase what they chase, to quiet the voice that's been faithful to you your whole life, even when you tried to ignore it. That voice was never your weakness. It was the thread heaven tied to you before you were born, so that no matter how far you wandered, you could always be pulled back to who you really are. The 99 aren't bad people. I want to be clear about that. They're just asleep. They've never been shown the other ledger. They've never been told the ache they feel is a calling and not a defect. And maybe part of why you're here, part of why you carry what you carry, is so that you can be one of the few who's awake and gently, over time, help wake the people around you. Not by preaching at them, by being the one with something settled underneath, in a world full of people running on empty. People notice that. They can't always name it, but they notice it. And one day, one of them is going to ask you how you stay so steady. That'll be the moment everything you built in the quiet starts to matter for somebody else. So here's what I want from you before you go. I don't want a generic comment. I want you to think of one specific moment in your own life, one time, when you did the right thing and it cost you something, and nobody ever noticed. A moment in your own field, your own prison, your own desert. And I want you to tell me about it in the comments. Just one sentence. What you did and what it cost you. Because I have a feeling that when you write it down, when you finally name the thing heaven has already been counting, you're going to realize you've been a chosen one for a lot longer than you knew. I'll be reading every single one, and I'll be praying over them. This channel is created without ads and without platform income. If these messages have touched your heart, strengthened your faith, or helped you during a difficult moment, and you'd like to support this work, you can use the QR code on your screen or the contribution link in the pinned comment. Thank you for walking this path with us.